Hi, this is JoonWon.
Hi, this is HeeBae. We are going to talk about prejudice and bias. Here's our topic for this project. How are they created and how do we overcome them? First, how are prejudice and bias created?
Basically, prejudice and bias are unreasonable dislikes of a particular group of people or a prejudice for a group of people. They are mostly born by not accepting or acknowledging other people's distinctions or differences, and sometimes they can be created by capitalism and colonialism.
The racial discrimination is one example of prejudice and bias.
And we got a very special reporter, Paul Choi, and he's going to interview JoonWon about racial discrimination.
Hi, my name is Paul Choi and I'm going to interview with JoonWon.
First, can you tell us what racial discrimination is?
I think racial discrimination is when two races don't know each other well enough and they would be looking down at each other.
So the second question is, how does racial discrimination relate with prejudice and bias?
I think it relates since they're different from each other, they judge by how they look, and because they're different, they might treat each other as like aliens.
There are some quotes about racial discrimination from the book Black Lady.
Here's the situation. When Mr. Wilson was taking a bus in Mississippi State, there were several segregations. When white people wanna go to the restroom during the bus trip, bus driver allowed them. But when black people wanna do the same thing during the trip, the bus driver did not allow them and simply ignored them. In The Black Like Me, Mr. Griffin said, unable to believe he really meant to deprive us of the restroom privilege.
Second quote is about the situation in bus station. When the main character, Mr. Griffin, asks something to clerk at ticket counter, clerk at ticket counter stared at Mr. Griffin with hatred stares. In the book, Mr. Griffin said she answered rudely and glared at me with such loathing, the hate stare.
This is our third quote from the book Black Like Me. Mr. Griffin said, though nominally segregation is not permitted on interstate buses, I occupied a seat to myself not far from the back. This is what Mr. Griffin said in the bus during his bus trip in Mississippi State. We are going to show you a historical video which is about the last quote.
FBI field report. Bayard Rustin was one of 12 individuals, both Negroes and whites, who left New York City in April 1947 on a so-called journey of reconciliation through the southern states. The purpose of this bus trip, organized by the Fellowship of Reconciliation, was to test racial discrimination laws. On April 17, 1947, Rustin, Negro, was convicted at Chapel Hill, North Carolina, for sitting with a white man on a public bus.
The freedom riders set out to challenge the status quo and customs that enforced segregation. So the second question is, how do you overcome prejudice and bias? Basically, hatred cannot be resolved by hatred. Mutual understanding, respect, communication, and educational opportunity can lead us to reconciliation. We have another interview with Toby about the way we can overcome prejudice and bias. Here is our special reporter, Paul Choi.
Hi, my name is Paul Choi and I'm going to interview with Toby. Okay, hi. What do you think is the best way to overcome prejudice and bias?
Okay. I think you have to start with where prejudice and biases originate, and I think it comes from ignorance. So I think the best way you can overcome a prejudice would be to learn about what you don't understand. So it's not only ignorance, but it's also you have to overcome pride. When you have prejudices, usually your own kind of selfishness and pride gets in the way, so you have to be humble enough to admit that you had a misunderstanding.
It is true that overcoming prejudice and bias has many difficulties, but if everyone tries to understand differences in each other, then finally we probably can gradually overcome prejudice and bias.
Thank you for watching our video. Bye.